first memories of the very beginning, first and foremost, Bob Marshall, the English invasion. I didn't have a real valid point of reference, but because it was kind of after the Beatles, but here was, Bob Marshall was kind of and the Dave Ducketts, they were kind of the rock star heroes of the day. They were brought something to the game that nobody had ever seen. Bruce Daniels, very first contest, 1980. It was 11 guys. There was that core group of local Calgary Farriers, but then there was Bob Marshall, there was Bruce Daniels, and Bruce was kind of representing the Team USA type of deal, and he was loud and proud and couldn't believe that, who are we to call it a world championship, blah, blah, blah. And Bruce was kind of the big dog back then, and he kind of got spanked. He kind of found out where the bear shits in the woods that day, and that was a big eye opener for him. First time meeting David Wilson Sr., who was a personal hero of mine, older Scotsman, and just a phenomenal hand, sixth generation blacksmith. Been there, done that. Just not fancy. Just this is what he does every day. This is how he does it every day. That was way cool. Meeting the GE family. Bob Garner's mom, Beth. I remember meeting her very early. Beautiful human being, and they sort of set in motion a company that's provided world-class tools for a generation that continued to be a industry leader. Those things jump out. Conversely, here comes Jay Sharp, the 5-gallon pail full of handmade tools, showing the other end of the scale, that launched another whole sort of sub-industry of handmade tools, probably more pushing the art and the traditional side of the equation. He was truly a blacksmith, truly a phenomenal tool maker. And if Jay could have ever seen his way past himself to have people work for him that could stand and be around him for more than 5 minutes, he might have retired a rich man, instead of a starving old artist. Grant Moon. The first time I met Grant Moon, Grant and I have had kind of a adversarial headbutting relationship for 30 plus years, and we have this sort of weird connection that we've had a roller coaster of emotions and experiences, and I would consider Grant to be probably one of the most hardcore competitors of any sport that I've ever seen in my life. He's a force of nature unto himself, and when he first showed up, it was with another bunch of young guns, another British invasion. It was the next generation. Dave Duckett was one of Grant Moon and Billy Crothers' mentors. So here's another generation of these young guys, and they set the world on fire. It was Carl Bettison, Grant Moon, Billy Crothers, and they showed up, and they were just pups. I was a pup back then too, but I didn't have an overview. I was just riding the wave along with all of them. So that was really cool to me. Seeing the Mustad family. When they first came along in 1982, that was the first year that they showed up at Calgary Stampede, and it was more of a social thing. They were wined and dined and treated like royalty, and they came for a party. It was a big, it was a big social thing for them, and that was sort of set the tone and the stage for the sort of the first half of the World Championship Blacksmith competition's experience. It was very much it was a family-run contest. It was supported by another great family, and that's the Mustad family. It was a lot of familial connections, and there's just I've got a kaleidoscope of faces and images that I can process. They're all unique. Edward Martin, the first time I met Edward Martin, and I think it was Dr. Aoki, Japanese fellow that came along, and they had one of their first World Farrier Association meetings in Bill Pratt's back room. They came along for a little show and tell and little kick some tires, and that was the very first exposure I had to Edward Martin, and understood that there was another whole big world out there. I'd heard stories and the man, the myth, the legend, and it wasn't until meeting Edward face to face at Jay Sharp's place quite a few later that I got some up close personal time with Edward, and he chewed my ass the first time I had some FaceTime with him. He took me to school hard, and I'll never forget that. And, at that time, we had introduced a pool of shoes into the contest, and they were all hard forging classes, very, sort of forging exercises. They might not have been very good usable shoes. They were more exercises than they were, everyday working kind of things. And Edward said, there's no point in building a shoe if it's not going to go on a horse's foot. And he said, most of these shoes are just nonsense. I said, you're wasting people's time, absolutely wasting people's time. Why would you ever build that shoe? And like he took me to task, and I'll never forget that. And I was phenomenally fortunate to be a part of that first weekend that Edward and Jay had together. They were fast friends, and I've got so many stories about those two that it's just wild. But class individual, absolutely a leader in our industry. It made a phenomenal difference to so many different people, both those gentlemen, and I was lucky to have known them and spent the time I did with both of them. So, yeah, those are the just the bare minimum highlights. I mean, I've been phenomenally fortunate. I've had a front row seat. I've had the best seat in the house for 30 years, to more than 30 years, for something that's had a phenomenal global impact. So yeah, I've got an education I couldn't have paid for. This is the 35th anniversary for the World Championship Blacksmith Competition, and it is unfortunately its time on Stampede Park has ended. Calgary Stampede is going through a bunch of revisioning for the future, and they've decided that they would like to see a different representation of horseshoeing and blacksmithing on Stampede Park. They don't want to see a contest represented anymore. They would like to see a 10-day demonstration, and that's fair enough from their perspective. Their needs would be far better served from that, but I think it probably speaks to a bigger conversation about where our world is going. I mean, obviously the visual of putting hot shoes on horses' feet, terrifies some people. That medieval look of driving nails into their feet, it terrifies some people. The concept of using horses for work or sport terrifies some people, and I think Stampede is probably capitulated a little too much to the vocal minority that stresses out about things that they really have no valid point of reference for. And from their perspective, they're always fighting that battle between public perception and around all of their livestock issues, whether it's the chuck wagon racing or the heavy horse pulls or even putting shoes on horses' feet. So it's had its time and its day on Stampede Park, and I think that I believe that the contest has value. I think it's going to live and breathe somewhere else in the world. I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for us to revision and repurpose what we do. I think that there's a phenomenal chance for us to be able to take what we do and showcase it somewhere else in the world, somewhere there's a horse audience, a horse-owning public audience, and I think that we can use our world champions, and showcase what they can do, what the very best in the world can do in regards to hoof care. You know, I've often felt, and I so totally believe, that we have to quit defending what we do as a necessary evil and start promoting it as a value-added alternative to pain and suffering. You know, we seem to be, there's so many camps that are vying for control of the message, you know, about who owns the, you know, the moral high ground on hoof care. You know, and I believe that our trade is not going away. I believe that we have phenomenal value to the horse owning world and to horses. Period. I think we are the caretakers of you know, their soundness in a lot of regards. I think that it's such a long standing, proud trade, profession, art, craft, science, whatever name you want to call it. It's all of it, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And if I have anything to say, I would like to see it continue to grow and thrive and be valid. You know, whether it's on Stampede Park or somewhere else in the world. Well, Don's going to hate me to say this, but I make sure that I tell all the guys that come to work for me. I had I wouldn't call it classical apprenticeship. I was basically there to help out. I shoveled more shit and held more horses and swept more floors than I ever did actual physical shoeing in that regard. A lot of times I think I was there as more a sounding board, a companion of sorts. It wasn't necessarily about the shoeing. It was more about having somebody there to help, and it wasn't just the everyday shoeing. It was helping out with the contests and the clinics and getting immersed in the trade. I worked for $10 a day. That was what I got paid, and it sure wasn't much. It barely paid for gas. So for a young guy coming out of school and getting into that, my attitude was, I didn't have it before. I was used to starving. Starving is easy, but I also believe starvation is a huge motivator. And so how I survived was, you know, I would trim a couple horses on the way home, or you know, start to develop my business through hand-me-down customers. And by the time I had spent 5 years with Don, he had cycled out of shoeing. He retired from shoeing after the 5 years. I don't know whether I drove him into retirement or it was a personal choice, but he quit shoeing at that time, and it was a very abrupt retirement. He just didn't show up for work one day. He was dealing with some personal stuff, and he just quit. And so all of his expanded business sort of fell into my lap at that time, and it was a sink or swim kind of deal. I ended up only keeping half of the work that fell into my lap. I was still a kid. I was still quite wet behind the ears as far as the trainers were concerned. I think there is always a quickening or a proving of yourself. If you've always worked for or apprenticed with somebody, you will always be the hired help. And to be able to establish your own identity, your own book, your own client base, I think you have to, you know, step out from underneath the shadow. And so that's what happened with me. And I was fortunate enough to have enough skills at that time to be able to carry on with most of the work. It was also at that time that I went to Jay Sharp's for the very first time. I had known Jay through the World Championships. I'd seen him. I had knowledge of him, but I'd never experienced the man personally in his own setting. And Jay had a little school down in Salmon, Idaho, and he would have a gathering once or twice a year of like-minded guys that would come together, and have an intense J-sharp experience. So after Don quit, I decided to go and make the journey to go see Jay, and it was like one of those pilgrimages to, the man in the mountain type of thing, and that was a watershed moment for me. That was sort of an introduction to another club, another tribe, another group of guys that were all like-minded. We're all young keeners, sort of evolving into our own businesses and the young guns. When I look around the competition floor at the convention today, I see some of those same groups of guys, the keeners, the guys that have the fire and want it, and it kind of takes me back. So it makes me smile, makes me believe in the future, a little bit more. And so that was a big day. First time I went to Jay's, that was an education and a half. Sort of being away outside of the comfort zone, being in a totally foreign environment, kind of getting tossed into the deep end. Here was, the man, the myth, the legend, and one of the crankiest bastards you'd ever meet in your life. And at that time, he was kind of a hard living kind of guy, and very demanding, scared the shit out of you type of thing. You never knew if it was all real. And I was fortunate because I had the Stampede connection, and Stampede was one of the few places that Jay was really fond of. Jay had actually shod chuck wagon horses at the Calgary Stampede back in the 50s in one of his many different lives. He had a real connection to the Stampede, so there was a fond spot there for him. So he cut me a bunch of slack because I was sort of the face of the Stampede for him. And he also was a major league pain in the ass. And every time he would come up to Calgary, he would sort of call in favors and lean on you quite heavily for rock star style attention. But it was something that was gladly given because he was the master. He also introduced me to a lot of really cool people. I was fortunate enough to go down to Jay's, 6 or 8 different times, and I would always work it in my benefit. I would always go down a day or two earlier and help him set up for the clinic. So he would chew on your ass for a couple of days, but you would always end up getting a lot of personal time with Jay. And then the clinic would happen, and you. Not to be a suckhole or a teacher's pet, but I would definitely make it work for myself. I'm one of those people that believes you steal with your eyes and your ears, and I made sure that they were all beneficial experiences. And the guy was absolutely a very unique human being and a living legend. And towards the end of his life, I took my 16-year-old boy at that time on a road trip to Vegas to go meet somebody who I thought was a pretty cool dude. And for as flawed a human being as he was phenomenally talented, phenomenally generous and prolific, and you use every adjective you want. The guy was a real deal. And the world's a smaller place without him, but he's also left a huge footprint, a huge influence. All you have to do is walk around the convention and see the influence in the tool making, and the if guys don't have some J-sharp tools, they should hunt some down and get them, because they're the real deal.